Hello and welcome to our podcast on franchise. And today, me and my business partner Sanjay Soruth will be talking about franchise. How do you franchise? And how do you make money from the growing your business through franchise in New Zealand, in Australia, and UK? So over to you, Sanjay.
Thanks, Jay. Well, in spite of you getting my name other way around, I go by Soruth Sanjay, and I'm one of the directors of ORB360 franchise. So at ORB360 franchise, what we do is we're franchise consultants. So we help you scale your business and franchise. So we do all the documentation, systems, and procedures, and help you get a franchise model which is scalable and fundable, and take you overseas as well. So that's one part of what we do here in ORB360 franchise. And the other part to it, what we do is we get brands from overseas, like Jay said, UK and the US to New Zealand and even Australia, and also taking brands from New Zealand overseas as well. So that's what we do here in a nutshell at ORB360 franchise consultants.
Thank you, Sanjay. I think today's discussion will be very fascinating because we'll be talking about how do you scale your business in New Zealand without spending any money from your pocket, and take it all the way in every part of New Zealand by actually using your own goodwill, which some people know or they don't realize. So we are here to unleash that potential of using your goodwill in your business and using that for expansion and growing your business and for you to have money for jam.
That's very, very, very rightly said. I think before we get into stuff, probably give a bit of brief background about yourself so people know exactly whom they're dealing with at the moment.
Oh, yes, thanks, Sanjay. Look, I'm JC, Jay Changlani, and my expertise is franchise, and I'm an accountant, chartered accountant as well. So I run my accounting business, and I help my business my clients to actually grow their business by using various mechanisms. And one of them is franchise, and other one is license. So if somebody's looking to grow the business by franchise or license, I help them. I've been doing it for almost 20 years, using this platform of growth, which is franchise. I specialize in this area. My specialty is using the IP, using the goodwill in the business to grow. And Sanjay has joined us in this business as a director of the company, as a partner in the business. And together, we have done several businesses that we've acted for. In Australia and New Zealand, we've partnered with almost 60 different franchise resorts, and we help them in various ways. In New Zealand itself, we've done half dozen of it, and in US, which we attend different seminars and webinars, and we go and learn from a different franchise models, and we bring that into New Zealand and help them to grow. In America, we have a brand that we have a strategic relationship, and that has really helped us to take our client from New Zealand into America. So Sanjay, you've been with me to New York last year at the IFA, which is International Franchise Association Conference. Tell us your experience. How was it?
Pretty good to start off with, because that was my first time in the States. It was really good. I was stoked to go to the States, have a look at what was happening on the other side of the world. Heard a lot of people talk about how business is done. I had a few chats with the consulate before going, and they always talk big in numbers. They always consider New Zealand really tiny, So the expectations was like right up there. So it was really, really interesting when I went first stepped into New York. Jay and I both went together for a few weeks. It was really, the conference in general altogether was fantastic. Where I got to meet a lot of different business owners, different kinds of businesses in a nutshell, where I got to speak, and definitely good speakers. We attended good sessions where we got to meet a good few speakers where we learned a little bit, which we kind of implemented here in New Zealand and also help with our clients as well. But in terms of the businesses what we met was really fascinated me was there's so many different kinds of businesses in the market in the States, which is scalable, profitable, and definitely worth giving a shot here in New Zealand. So that's where my eyes went, was like, definitely have to look at this opportunity here in New Zealand. It's not always, people always think, oh, it's always hospitality or service or something like that. It's not only that. It's not only limited to that. There is a lot of demand for hospitality, no doubt about it. But I think more so is to do with other different industries as well. Just to give you an example, a few which Jay and I saw was, one was kids, the students, maths class. The way they teach maths to young students and kids in the younger generation was really, really fascinating. A brand from America, which is really good, which can be franchised here in New Zealand. The other one was to do with another robotics, which was really fascinating as well, just again to do with kids. And definitely here, I've seen people kind of complaining about the lack of education what the kids receive here in New Zealand, in terms of financially or even literally. So I think definitely getting new stuff like this, which is innovative for people here in New Zealand market, I think is a big way to go, and there's a long way to go. And there's definitely good growth, definitely a lot of money to make, no doubt about it for anyone. And yeah, and in a nutshell, I think the whole trip for me was fantastic. The weather was great when we went there. Food was amazing, don't even ask. Even though Jay is only vegetarian, by the way, so he couldn't eat much of the stuff. But I enjoyed my time in New York. That was my first conference, first business trip. It was really, really eye-opener for me, especially at this really young age, to go out there, talk to a lot of different business people, try to make deals happen. So it was really good for me.
Oh, fantastic, Sanjay. I'm really glad that you actually touched on, first of all, the experience itself. That was very, very good. And you learned lots from different businesses and different franchise model and systems. Also, you talked about variety of brands that's there in America. They're seeking and they're trying to come into New Zealand. The biggest problem we have sometimes is funding. People say, oh, we're going to get American brand. It's going to cost a lot of money. You had a recent success in that. I remember you and I, we talked about a brand from America. We brought them in New Zealand, and you've been pioneer in making sure that deal goes through. Do you want to talk about that brand, hospitality that you did fantastically well, and how you expanded that in New Zealand now, in Auckland?
Yeah, definitely. The brand which we worked on together was a brand from a hospitality brand called Pizza Inn, for a Texas-based pizzeria based out of Texas in the States. So we first started having initial conversations with the consulate here, and we had the initial talk, and then we got into touch with the people there in the States. It was really, really quick, and it wasn't a lengthy process or anything to do with. I think it was really that was one of the first few deals which I worked on at the start, where I was hands-on on complete from start to finish, which was really, really good for my learning as well. So I think the deal was Pizza Inn, like I said, was really the first thing when I got to know that this brand definitely want to come into New Zealand was when we spoke to our client, and the client's first initial question was, like you said, how much is it going to cost me? Is it a big chunk? Where am I going to get the money from? Is it worth investing? Will I make the money? What's your X, Y, Z and stuff like that? So definitely can understand the client's point of view. If you're putting money, you definitely want to get your money's worth back. But rightly said, like you and I had a meeting with the team of the CEOs and stuff for the Pizza Inn. We had really good meetings, included with the councillors, and we cracked on the deal. And I believe it was during COVID as well, which was not an easy task to do. With COVID, people panicking. Things are happening drastic all around the world. People just didn't know how to react. New Zealand was in a really different situation with lockdowns and all the other kinds of stuff. So there was like kind of no hope, where I thought kind of what one stage I was like, is this deal going to actually really happen? Are we going to wait, or what's going to happen? Are they going to lose interest? Are we going to lose interest? What's going to happen? But God's grace, everything went well. Our client got the deal. It wasn't big figures with what everyone thinks of. Everyone was like, oh, US dollars. They always ask for more. There's always room for negotiation. The one thing I would like to tell people is just don't be afraid of asking what it is actually, what is actually worth, giving a shot out there. Just don't go back and say, just don't be like, oh, it's not worth it. It's going to cost, $1 million, $2 million, whatever it is, for example. It's not always going to be what you actually think. There's always room for negotiations. There's always room for some kind of arrangements to be done. So we somehow nicked into it, got a really good deal for our client, and we signed the agreement. The first store was opened, I think a couple years ago now, out in Mount Wellington on Lan Ave. And the development plan is to do open 10 stores throughout the country in the next 5 to 6 years or so. But at the moment it was one, and now the clients are, and we've opened a second store, which is going up and coming in June, July, if I'm not wrong, out in Flatbush, another one in Auckland. And then the next thing is probably going to move on to Hamilton, Wellington, South Island and stuff like that, based on the demands and the needs of people. Definitely got given a try. Shout out to Pizza Inn. Definitely worth the pizza.
Absolutely, man. Look, fantastic. Oh, thank you so much for making the deal happen, Sanjay. You played a vital role in delivering that. Now, the experience from that and a recent visit to New York, sorry, it was last year, today, and I just came back from LA, another IFA conference just a few weeks ago. And I was fascinated to see the similar brands that's there in the market who are trying to come to New Zealand. Some of this are burger clients who are in burger companies. Then you've got another pizza company, a lot of plant-based food companies, then the variety of services business. One was actually very fascinating that came out of that conversation with the US Council. It was a closet arranging franchise. So this is so simple. In America, this lady, what she does is she sends her team to go out and organize a closet for a client, and she charge for 4 hours for that, and she does it every week, and she's got almost 20 franchisees working for her, a business which is worth $8 million, and all she does is organize a closet. So that's what this is how the Americans are. They're very creative. They're looking for the options. They find way to make money, and so we have to learn from this. And I find it very fascinating, isn't it, when we go out there in America and see these people, they always look for this, it's a subtle way of making money, and they are very successful. Of course, we're looking at New Zealand market. It's comparatively very small, but in franchise per capita, we're one of the largest in the world in terms of what we're doing. I feel there's an opportunity for actually for small businesses to actually look at growing by way of franchise in New Zealand. And also, other way around in America, if there's a brand that wants to come in New Zealand, they can look at option of master franchising in New Zealand. So it's both ways. We can actually have these kind of communication going. What are your experience with master franchises in New Zealand?
Like you said, master franchises, there's there's the different ways of getting franchisors into New Zealand. One of the ways is master franchise. So master franchise is basically like we did for Pizza Inn, like where our client got the master franchisor for New Zealand. So he owns the actual rights for the brand in New Zealand. So he is the master franchisor for New Zealand. So after that, is basically he sells on and adding on more franchisees on board and building up a strong base, solid team around him across the country. So that's one of the options, is the master franchise options into the country.
And the key in that master franchise, we've learned that, and we've done this for others as well, that sharing of royalty. So, for example, if you sell a franchise as a master franchisor to a franchisee in New Zealand, and they set up a store and they make every dollar they make, say for example, if they're charging 5 cents in a dollar, 50% of that goes to the local master franchise in New Zealand. So it's somebody else's effort, somebody else's brand, but you taking the tip in a clip on the ticket here because you're the one who set up that franchise base in New Zealand. It's very fascinating, as you can see that, how you can make money by just having that sort of connection and understanding, and be an entrepreneur to start something in New Zealand. That's something which has got some sort of salability. Now, we have come across so many of these brands who are looking to come in New Zealand. We go to IFA conference at least once a year or sometimes twice a year now, because we actually can meet and see all these entrepreneurs. It's buzzing. When we go and meet these people, they have these ideas. They're always looking for option to grow. And we are very fascinating. We're so fascinated by that. Now, coming back to New Zealand. So what does ORB360 franchise does? We have done half a dozen of this in New Zealand so far, and we've acted for hospitality. We've acted for a Korean, hot dog. We've acted for Indian restaurant. We've acted for fruit and veggie shop. We've acted for a cafe. We've acted for so many variety of business. So we have taken that small business and scaled up in New Zealand. What we are doing? Can you just explain that?
Let's break it down for the people to understand exactly what we do in New Zealand for New Zealand businesses. And then talk about how we talk about international brands later. I think most so important, like Jay said, is the New Zealand brands where we worked on is, the majority of it is in hospitality sector. It's not like that's the only sector we focus on. We focus on all the sectors, but that's the only one at the market which is booming and more priority is given on to. So we've done the Indian restaurant. We've done, like Jay said, at the moment, we're working on something to do with commercial cleaning, which is another really interesting one. And we've done the Korean hot dog and the fruit and veggie for one of the Samoan-based business. So what we do in a nutshell for these New Zealand business to go franchise is very, very, very simple. So we come along. So I'll just take you through the journey of how we, from start to finish, of how we onboard you. So let's say, for example, you've got a business, you've got a cafe, fantastic cafe, been in the business for years, really good in the market, people love it, you've got blah, 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 you're making good chunk of money, you're making good profits, XYZ. You come in, you have a chat, you have a conversation with us and say, hey, look, I see my cafe doing really well, and say, I definitely see this. Let's say you've got a vegan cafe, because there's not enough good vegan ones here in Newmarket, because we're based in Newmarket. Let's get some vegan ones up and coming. Let's say a vegan cafe, you've done a one in here in Auckland, which is really well. And then you say, okay, I want to do one in Wellington or one in Hamilton, and so on and so forth. So your plan is, and you definitely back that you've got really good recipes and stuff, really good food that people would love it. Any vegan lover would love it. So you come up, you sit with us, and we understand exactly. We go through your finances. The advantage of coming to us, we chartered accountants as well, so we know numbers. We do numbers. We eat numbers on a daily. So there's no better person to come on and sit down and talk numbers to as well. So we're not just consultant who does consulting work. We talk more in numbers. We exactly understand what you guys deal with and how we can, work towards getting you franchise as well. Speaking of which, we worked with one of the clients who wanted to actually go franchise, a business based in Hamilton. I don't know if you remember, where we met and we was talking about the financials and the financial modeling when I said it was actually not worth doing franchise at the moment. So there are certain instances where, we come across and say the business might not at the moment be franchise ready, but what we can do is we'll give you, it's like I said, we are chartered accountants. We will give you a budget of financial modeling, a set of things which you need to follow for your business for the next, say, 6 to 8 months to work on your business, to work on it and get to those numbers. To then sit down and have a different conversation and then say, okay, are you ready now? So there are instances as well. You might not be, it's not a time, it's always a time where it comes in. Business might not be ready at the moment, but definitely can be ready down 6 to 8 months down the line as well. So coming back, so what we do is, you sit down with us and we understand, we go through the numbers firstly. We go through the numbers and say, okay, what's your basic numbers looking like? Top number, gross profits, net profit, what are your overhead costs? What are your salaries, wages, rent? What's it going to cost roughly to start another franchise, including, all that stuff. So we just, on a high level, run down all the numbers. We've got our own software, financial modeling software, which we sit down with you and say, we put on all the numbers and say, what's the initial investments which is required for you to start the exact same cafe elsewhere, say in Hamilton or Wellington or wherever. So we think we do go run through the financial modeling to start off with first, because I think that's the utmost important to see. Everything else can come later is what I feel in terms of documentations, all that stuff. But if your business is not ready to scale on franchise, and which is going to only be found out by financial modeling, so we do that to start off with. So we run down the numbers. So once we get over with the numbers, the next thing we do is we say, okay, numbers looks great, fantastic. You franchise, the business can be franchisable. Okay, next what? Okay, what's your plan? What's your vision? So we sit down with the client not only to just make money. Money is kind of like you always tell me, it's always the byproduct. So I think it's not always money, it's always what your vision is. What do you want to do? What's your goal like in 5, 10, 3 years? What do you want to do? How do you want to scale your business? You want to go New Zealand, you want to get the market in New Zealand and then say, yep, 10 new stores in New Zealand, 10 cafes in New Zealand, then I want to go Australia. Fantastic. So everyone's got different thinking, goals, plans. Some are really conservative. Some are like, yeah, I want to do 20, 30, totally depends. So then after that, once we come and understand, do a kind of what we call is like a business plan. I sit down with you and understand what everything is. And then after, I would say, I would do something called as area mapping. So in area mapping, what we do is basically sit down and understand exactly which part or which place of the country or the city you have your store should be located, which is the second most important factor to consider while franchising and starting a business, irrespective of franchising or not. Having the right location, place is really important. So that's another thing we focus on. So after that, and then I sit down, I understand everything. Once a client or someone's happy with them, and then I run down a small presentation, what I've got, and I clearly identify what we do, what are the services we provide, what are the documentations, like how documentations of franchise and operations manual, the systems, procedures, putting everything online, because everything is online now, training, what all services we provide and what's required. Not all services we provide is required for you, probably. So there will be certain basic ones. There are like 3 different packages what we offer. So you will definitely fall into one, that's for sure. So there would be one. So sit down, run the presentation, and I give a client some time to think and digest the fact. Sometimes always our clients come back with hundreds of questions after sitting, discussing with their business partners or the wives or by themselves or the family members. So then we have a sit down conversation and say, okay, and then we go and say, you're happy with package 1, 2, or 3, whatever you go, and then we start. And like Jay said, we've got a team in the States which we work with very closely to help us to do all these system procedures, documentations. They've been in the industry for probably 30 plus years in the States, and they know this in and out, so there's no better person to tie up with. So yeah, that's and then all the documentation, that's the nutshell to start off and generally what we do at ORB360 to start off to get you on a franchise model.
I think what you touched upon, just to summarize, there are a few things that came out of that. One is when we're preparing this franchise documents, we are looking at, number one, is the business feasible? Financially, is it feasible, number one? Once the business is feasible, then we do analysis of what will it take to set up or start the first franchise operation. Then we also look at how much royalty fee would be, how much royalty you can charge, what your initial cost franchise fee should be. So calculating all that, does a business stack up based on that? And once we have done that, then come the documentation, preparing all the manuals and processes, your structure, and then loading that online so that you can actually run that program. In a nutshell, that's what we're preparing the documentation for. Once this bundle of documents are prepared, then it becomes tradable. Now, I've experienced it that the banks, especially the funders, when they're funding the franchisees for the model, so to speak, they also want to have a clarity about the documentation, how it looks like, and whether they feel comfortable with overall plan, what we're suggesting them. There's also a role of a lawyer. So what does the lawyer do in this? Because we've done all the documentation. What does lawyer do according to you?
The lawyer looks after all the legal complements to the franchise agreements and the non-disclosure documents and all the other legal aspects which is involved in franchising the business to make it simple. I don't want to go technical and kind of bog them down with all the technical calibers. So I would think to keep it plain and simple, we do all the financial side of things and doing the documentations to make all the systems and procedures, but the legal aspect, which is like the non-NDA, which is called a non-disclosure agreements, and the sometimes the sale and purchase agreements, all those kind of stuff is dealt with the lawyer.
Fantastic. So the lawyer has a part to do as well, and the employment agreements, of course, and making sure we register the IP. So once we actually develop this brand, then the marketing people come along and design the logo and do the launch, and we use a marketing person, Rohit Bali, for franchising. He's fantastic. He's been good. He's the one who's shooting all this as well. And once we do that, he takes over, he designs, and he uses his team to develop the marketing brochures, etc., which then get lawyers to trademark that online. When the trademark happens, the funders fund the money, and off we go. A lot of franchisors also do this vendor finance, which is an interesting part where once the first few is set up, the franchisor are in the best position to consider whether they can actually fund the project by a vendor finance scheme. How does vendor financing work?
Good question. Vendor financing is another aspect where a lot of people might wonder if you want to buy a franchise business, and they might say, "Oh, it's going to cost too much," and the banks might not fund it, or the exact amount what they require. So if the big business is worth, say, the franchise business is worth, say, 100,000. Say, for example, banks will probably only give you 50 or 60. The balance 40 is short, and you don't want to use your savings.
That's right.
What are you going to do? You're going to give up on the plan. You want to stop the plan that you want to go down by a business, or what's the thing? So the aspect of vendor finance would then come into the picture is when basically you don't have to put $1 from your pocket to start or buy that business where the vendor himself finances the balance or the full, depending on the agreement of what you guys have got. And then you pay off the amounts monthly basis like a normal, any loan installment, but through the business when the business starts making the money.
Fantastic. So that's really good. So opportunity there as well for people who are looking to start a business but doesn't have money, but have got skill sets or some knowledge and have a lot of enthusiasm and patience to make it successful. That's very good. So look, coming back to this idea of license, my experience is that with license normally is area based and service based. For businesses such as we were dealing with, remember we did a pitch to a guy who did Paragola.
Yep.
In North Shore, and we were talking about how we can consider license as a model instead of franchise, because license actually makes more sense, where they can actually have a license agreement for a term of say 5 years, or one term of 5 years, the 5 plus 5 for 10 years. Tax-wise, it's very efficient as well. It can amortize the license as well, license fees. And a lot of people prefer to actually go with that on a specific sort of businesses that is very, very, it is useful for. So you've seen, from my experience that, you've seen that model that works. What else is something that, which is low-hanging fruit in the franchise world at the moment, specifically in the service industry?
Low hanging in terms of service industry. Really good question. You had me thinking there. What I would say is, what's low hanging in the current market for the franchise industry?
Yeah, I think the low hanging fruit in the franchise world at the moment would be a business that has got a lot of goodwill in terms of their brand value. They're making good money, such as, for example, a successful cafe, a successful cleaning business, a successful marketing business as well can be franchised. I've seen finance mortgage brokers franchising as well. So there's options. There are a lot of options available. As long as the business is a sustainable model and I've got a good strategy in place, they're all considered as a very, very efficient franchise business.
Oh, yeah. Well, rightly said. You had me thinking there for a minute, saying I was just thinking, I was like, what's the low-hanging fruit? Is he putting me on the spot? But yeah, definitely well said. Definitely agree on that. Probably the best thing probably would do is just for people to understand, like you said, if you could give, what's the advantages of franchising in the market, right? Than licensing, or like what would be how should like a person, let's say if me buying a business or want to buy a business or something, let's say, what do I have to look at the first thing and say, what's the best way to go? Should I franchise, or should I start my business on my own from scratch, or like license or joint venture? What's the best model for people to pick?
Oh, look, it's horses but courses. Look, some people will go with actually starting the business from scratch because that's what they've been told, or that's something which everybody does. Or some people can actually go in some sort of partnership with some other people who has got some experience. Franchise is actually a proven model. So if a franchisor has already set up something and is working, the franchisee is basically has got an opportunity to actually expand based on what's in front of them. The franchisor are normally responsible for training, so it's give you a good platform. But for franchisor to consider, the franchisor, or a business to consider between going into franchise or to start a new office or a new branch, then they have to consider various options. One of the options they will have to consider is if they look at starting their own office, then they have to consider all the real estate cost lease agreements, lease cost, outgoing cost. In the franchise world, if they set up a franchise model, then they don't have to consider any of these costs because all these costs belong to franchisee. And from them, it'll be easier just to get a franchisee to take all the risk. But their risk is basically to make sure the franchisee is successful. And which is what? The franchisor has to make sure that the processes are robust. They're good, so that the franchisee who's looking to set up this business is successful. A successful franchisor is a successful franchisee. If that's the mindset of the franchisor, that to actually make his franchisee successful and make more money, a lot of money, then you're right track. Because then it becomes a word of mouth, and that's when it spreads like a wildfire. Franchisor's mindset to see that is a success. And there are a lot of successful franchises. We have New Zealand brands who are very successful in doing what they do. Coffee, in a coffee brand, there's successful coffee brands. There's a successful lawn mowing brand. Then there's successful cleaning businesses. All these businesses have been successful because they invest in their franchisee training. They make sure that the franchisee is successful. So I feel that that's what the nature of this business is. The training, nurturing, mentoring, and helping the franchisee to be successful.
Yeah, good on the whys of good explanation, so people can get an idea of what exactly franchise is, what model to go franchise. Because I've had a lot of people always, when I meet across everywhere, like in the gyms or when I'm out, when I say I do such kind of franchise and stuff, they're like, "What's the best model to go? Like, is it franchise or is it license or stuff like that?" And when I say, sometimes when I give them the differentiation between license, franchise, and stuff, and then few people know about like half the money we'll be paying in royalties and marketing and stuff like that. We have to pay. It's that stuff. What's the good, good rate or the good amount? The royalties and marketing, whatever the charge a franchisor charge for franchisees should be. I know it's industry-based specific as well, and different businesses have different one. But just for people to know that they're not cutthroat, where they're not just ripping you off or stuff like that. It's where the good kind of boundary where you can negotiate and understand, hey, look, there's money to be made for everyone. It's not just one person taking the big piece of the cake.
You're right. I think, look, when you think about the percentage of what's the royalty percentage should be and what's the marketing cut should be. Now you have to understand marketing in three aspects here. So you got national marketing, which is done by the franchisor. The portion of that gets saved from the sales goes in that. Then the portion goes in local marketing, which is done by the franchisee in the local area. And there's also a component of PR, of what sort of PR work that needs to be done. So a franchisor might charge, say, 4%, just an example, a marketing fee, but has to be split into three different elements, sometimes two elements, depending on what the businesses and industry they are in. The question of royalty is very, very difficult answer to give because it can depend on various industry. Some industry, within the industry also, there's a discrepancies of how it is applied. Because we don't have any regulation as such in New Zealand on franchise, it's case by case basis, and it's all depend on what kind of documents you're signing. So if you are signing any franchise document, it's best to get a legal advice before you sign it, because if you don't get the legal advice, there are a lot of franchisors who have a very one-sided franchise agreements, and this can be very, very hurtful down the line when you invested your family money in something, knowing that this is your only source of income and you lost it because you actually signed a contract which is very one-sided. So it's always paid to get legal advice right up front on these kind of matters. I find that the franchise royalty is in the rough range between 4% to 8%, depending on what sort of industry they are in. And what kind of support the franchisor is giving. If franchise is giving very minimum support, of course, it should be a lower end. But if franchise is quite involved heavily on various aspects. Like one example, we've actually met somebody who was starting a building wash franchise, and they've invested quite a bit of money that equipment to start this building wash franchise, and the health and safety risk and the training program and all that stuff that franchisor has to provide, but quite intense, and therefore the franchise fee or royalty was quite significant. But as compared to other franchise, like a pizza franchise that we've just acted for, or a cleaning franchise that we're working on at the moment, franchisor we're working for at the moment, where the franchise fee is a little bit lesser as compared to this, because you know that if you charge a big chunk of money, the franchisee would not make money. If they don't make money, they will not be successful. They will not put their heart and soul in growing the business. And if that's the case, nobody's happy. So we want to make sure that we all working in the direction to make this success. And for that, the upfront cost should be as minimum as possible. And so that we can actually grow, we call it a sticky business, which is the franchise royalty fee, which is what the outcome of it when you actually do exit in the end. Now that leads to a very important conversation. Like franchisor has got, say, 20 franchisees they've built over a period of time. They're getting a good royalty every month. How do we actually value this business to sell, the franchisor's business to sell, or how do we actually exit them from the market?
That's fantastic. So for someone like who's already, for a franchisor who's already made 10, 15, 20 franchisees, already got 10, 15 franchisees in the country, and let's say he's been doing that for like 5, 6, 10 years whatsoever, and making a good chunk on the royalty and the income side of things. So it's very, very simple to run down. So what we do is we sit down with the franchisor and say, okay, we look at the numbers. Again, we have to numbers, everything relies on the numbers. So we look at the numbers and say, okay, what's the top number you're looking at, and what's the bottom number you're looking at? This, for different businesses, we've got different industries, we've got different multipliers which we use. Based on the turnover, based on the number of sites or the number of franchisees on board, and there's different multipliers which will be used to rate the value of the business for that franchisor to be sold. So usually, generally what happens, the franchise, such businesses, or when if it's like a $5-10 million worth, usually they sell it to, joint venture. They come in the picture and they buy out the business from these franchisor. And then the franchisor who's sold the business kind of retires and he's made his chunk, made his money and stuff. So to get to that stage is you go through all this process and stuff. But once you get to that stage and say, you sit down with us and you understand basically what your numbers look like, what can be realistic, valuation, a proper valuation in detail report will be given and be done by us. But just in general and high level to make people understand is basically there's a multiplier which we use for different businesses, different industries, where we sit down and say, based on the top line or the bottom line, times the multiplier, what's your business actually worth?
You're right, and I think also I'd like to add on that is that sometimes the business is doing really well, and it gets to like a multiplier which takes the value of the business to be around $20 million. At that stage, we get private equity funders. Private equity funders will take the business 20 million and take it to 100 million, and 100 million we get VCs who come along and buy that from 100 million onwards. And so there's a different exit plan depending on what sort of stage the business is at. It starts with a small mom and dad to a JV, joint venture, to a private equity funder, and from private equity it can go into the VC. So this is pretty much a life cycle of a franchise, starting from nothing or scratch with some sort of goodwill to growing the business. We share the development plan and then exiting. One thing we did miss in this point is around area mapping. So can you just tell us what is the scientific area mapping that we're giving to our clients?
Yeah. So area mapping is when it's a software. We've got a software which we use to understand the nitty-gritty of, like, when I'm doing the financial modeling. That's like I said, that's the first thing which I do for a client or the business to see the feasibility if it's worth franchising. So after that is the next thing is what I do is the area mapping. So area mapping is just to understand, which is really important as well, is just to understand the location of putting each franchisees in the country. Getting the right location is the utmost importance. Based on different businesses have different criteria and different factors come in a picture, but getting the location respective is the utmost important factor as well. So in area mapping, what we do is we sit down with the client and say, let's say you've got a cafe you want to franchise, and we sit down with the client and say, okay, cool, you've got one in Auckland. Okay, you want to do another one in Auckland, but you don't know which suburb to do it in Auckland. So we sit down, and so in our software, we've got a data for the whole country, where we sit down and understand, you name a street, let's say, for example, Kingdom Street or Short Street here in Newmarket, just to give you an example, say we can understand in that particular street, the amount of population of the people and the ethnicities of the people, the average annual income, gross income of the household income of that particular street, lane, suburb, you name it, you have it in that software. So we sit down, digest, and understand, okay, what's the actual suitable kind of customers for your cafe to, put you in that particular suburb. So, certain cafes might be suitable for high-end bougie suburbs like Ramiro or Parnell or stuff like that, but certain ones will be open to any suburbs or, stuff like that. So we work around a lot of factors. So one of the main factors in area mapping, what we look at, like I said, is the data which we receive from Statistics New Zealand, also the software, which is highly so skilled. Like sitting down, when I first used it, I was like, wow, it's like so involved, and with all these new softwares and technology coming in picture, it's so easy to understand exactly what the right place, market, people, suburb, and the structure is required to place your business in which part of the country.
I think that's fantastic. I think we've covered quite a bit today, and we spoke for a lot of for almost an hour. Hopefully we actually added some value to your thinking about franchise. And if you want to have more conversation about franchise, as you can see, Sanjay and I am very enthusiastic about franchise, and we'd love to actually have a chat with you. If you want to come along and discuss with us about your specific needs, or just want to have a catch up for a coffee with us, no obligation coffee with us, about a conversation. We are more than happy to have a conversation in all aspects and see what we can help you. We are always in a lookout for enthusiasts, franchise people, whether that's somebody who's looking to franchise, or somebody who's already franchised, or somebody who's a consultant, or somebody who's a lawyer, or somebody who just want to have a conversation about franchise. We are loving it. So coming along and have a chat with us, and we will be more than happy to come along and have a good time with you. So on that note, as bye from me, Sanjay, do you have any final comments before we finish this?
No, like you said, we're definitely more than happy to have a chat. Especially I've had a few. It doesn't matter how old you are. The age is just a number. So if you're a young chap listening who's got a really brilliant idea but don't know what to do, just like how I started, definitely feel free to reach out. More than happy to help and have a different conversation and guide you in the right place. For us, in a nutshell, is more so we want a story to tell people, like we're just saying, like we've done this, we want a successful story under our bag. So that's what more we're focused on, guiding you, training you, all that stuff comes into the picture. Nurturing you is what we look at more so to do with, like I always say, is money is always the byproduct to it. So yeah, in that note, definitely feel free to reach out us on our social media. The number, contact details, emails, all that will be displayed on the screen. More than happy to reach out to us at any time. Respective, definitely, I'll be the first one to give you a ring back if I don't pick the call. But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. And next podcast, we want to get somebody like a lawyer to come along and talk to us.
Yeah, probably get the legal side of things.
Or a marketing person to come along and talk to us.
Yeah.
Let's keep this conversation going. I love it, and I get enthusiastic by meeting and talking to like-minded people. So looking forward to meeting you. Thank you.